This chapter of Chainsaw Man has a lot to break down, from a hopeful character progressing moment for Denji that turned bizarre, needless to say, but this chapter was really weird, but also really interesting and has a lot of details that you can very easily miss. So we'll break down that and much more in the video. If you haven't, please drop a like on the video and subscribe to never miss a Chainsaw Man video. Now let's get into it. So the inevitable preamble to chaos has this girl filling up Denji's crotch, even calling him senpai and a virgin, and her dialogue here seems like an otaku's wet dream. In fact, that situation alone, I think many people would be into. However, there is a catch, because the things that are free in life are often the hardest deals to accept. There is no better example of this than the girl here who tells Denji to lick the dead devil before them. Doing so will grant Denji access to the sex. So what comes next is actually really surprising and I think a big growth moment for Denji. For me, I immediately found her sketchy and was like, bitch, don't you dare try to mess with Denji. And Denji as well actually agrees with me here, calling her sketchy. He even talks about how this whole situation is just too convenient. Like how they've never met, but wanted a blind date with him, and he really just doesn't stand for this treatment. He is matured, and he doesn't fall for, as he puts it, honey traps, which, side note, I think it's absolutely hilarious Fujimoto used the word honey trap here, because that's basically what Denji has been falling for since, well, the beginning of time, it seems. But Denji is tired of just trying to mindlessly obey people from some sort of reward that they've been dangling in front of him for all of this time. I mean, we go back in the history of Chainsaw Man. It's happened with Makima, happened with Power, though he sort of got what he wanted there to be fair, but happened with Reese, etc., etc., etc. Denji has finally, after all of this time, he realizes that people really only want to use him for their own selfish reasons. And while he goes back on his word, this is still a huge moment for Denji, because before he wouldn't even have realized this. This means that throughout all of this experience, slowly but surely, Denji is actually awakening to the world and its honey traps, so to speak. Really, it's an allegory for just one of the many aspects of life, and that would actually continue on in this chapter in another surprising way. So Denji, in the same breath telling her to get out of here and to have some self-respect for herself, then immediately gets on stage and starts to lick the dead devil. Denji fell for it again. She even tells him to do it like a popsicle and says to himself that, hey, because she's laughing, she's kind of cute. And once again, I don't think that this is a bad thing for Denji necessarily, because he's starting to learn. It's just sadly, he really hasn't learned his lesson enough to not want to have sex with just any girl that walks in front of him. As well, keep in mind, he's a horny teenager too. Just a kid. So they go to aptly named Karaoke Fujimoto, so you know there is going to be something here that goes down if the karaoke bar itself is named after Tatsuki Fujimoto, the creator of Chainsaw Man. And the reason they go here is because this is where they're going to have sex, as they're just students, so they can't really get access to a hotel. Kind of smart. But before they begin, she wants to sing a little tune and proceeds to, and this really just proceeds to one of the craziest moments in Chainsaw Man I've seen. I think this is like number 358 on the craziest moments in Chainsaw Man list, but who's counting? However, this is where things get even crazier from a writing perspective. Just the rest of this chapter is insane with detail, as she starts to sing a very interesting song. And, well, I'll put the title here because it's the same title as the chapter by Maximum the Hormone, basically. So, you know. But not sure if there is any connections here. But if you remember in Chainsaw Man Episode 3, this was the episode in which Denji tries to flirt with Power, but she takes advantage of him and makes him jump through hoops to save her cat Meowie from the Bat Devil. And I do think it's a little interesting that this is the beginning of the cycle, which started with Power, but has now led all the way into Chainsaw Man Part 2, which is pretty much here, that same basic scenario. However, as soon as she starts to recite the lyrics vinyl, a man with a bat, sort of like the Bat Devil, comes in and tries to hit Denji, but then proceeds just the craziest, most Quentin Tarantino-esque sequence where she's singing this MTH song as a line of just dudes with bats just waiting outside to fight Denji one after another. It's an insane visual, and I guess trying to analyze some of the lyrics here, though, to make some form of connection to why she's singing a song used for the Chainsaw Man anime, I think this song has a lot to do with the idea of sex driving a lot of our desires in life to do and be better. I think, traditionally speaking, most people will see this as the male getting a good job and talent to attract the female, right? That sort of basic and really primal instinct we all have, whether male, female, or other. Basically, success equals sex. We're all a slave to desire after all, and I think many of us, myself included, I'm no better, at the very least in the back of our heads, are a slave to this cycle. Get a good education, get a good job, raise a family, and then die happily. The lines that clearly point this out, at least to me, is sex, a looming meaning of rock, meaning, well, let's just say it this way, because to take a quote from Blood Meridian, if you have never read that, this is going to be crazy. One of the characters in this says, "It makes no difference what men think of war," said the judge. War endures. As well, ask men what they think of stone. War was always there. So basically, I'm making this connection because just like war, sex is always prevalent and relevant in anything. As well, the lines justice game, lust slave, uncontrollable desire. This is like in this chapter when Denji realizes what is right, aka his justice game, but still gives into his uncontrollable desire, which makes him a slave to lust. The line as well, the suitcase holds rope, duct tape, and a box cutter, could all be instruments to seal Denji's own fate, so basically it's like the saying, your own funeral, and he's doing this to himself. Also, a member of my server, Adoraburb, who has an amazing webtoon by the way, you need to check it out, I'll even review it if you want me to, stated that this song came out in 2007, but Chainsaw Man takes place somewhere between 1997 to 1998. 10 whole years after these events, supposedly. So, why? Does this song exist in 1997 in the Chainsaw Man universe? A theory that I think is a little too easy to scrounge up is time travel. I just don't think that's the case here. I could be wrong, but it seems unlikely to me. This also could just be a universal thing too. I could see Fujimoto just wanting to use the lyrics for this song in the manga, got permission to use them here because he probably felt like it fit. Also, Denji knows the second verse, meaning he's familiar with the tune, so this song has at the very least been around in the Chainsaw Man universe to some degree. Now, I very well could be wrong here. I just wanted to try and make some connections and give my thoughts on why Fujimoto would have this girl singing a song used for the Chainsaw Man anime of all things. There has to be a meaning to that, knowing Fujimoto, and I just wanted to take my own crack at it. Which is why I love to hear your thoughts and what you think it could be in the comments below if you got a different view of it. But the chapter then ends with both of them wielding a bat and facing off with each other. There are a lot of questions to naturally come from this. Most notably, who was this woman? On one hand, she could be a fiend or devil because as soon as she sang, a bunch of dudes with bats came barging in with no explanation. That would be a fair assessment, but as well, it could be a red herring of sort. She also could be working for another organization of some kind, which wants to hunt down Chainsaw Man. Maybe some extremist group who doesn't believe in the teaching of Chainsaw Man and wanted to track Denji down, knowing he was the real Chainsaw Man, or at least had some connection. However, whichever you think in the case or not the case, it's very weird that this girl wants to hunt down Chainsaw Man in the first place, no? If I'm remembering correctly, wasn't it stated that most devils have averted their attention to Asa Mitaka, and that Chainsaw Man isn't really what they're interested in right now? Whatever the case may be, this chapter of Chainsaw Man was just packed to the brim with detail, thought, and care, and I don't believe for a second things like this don't have some sort of connection to something more sinister, just like always. So, if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel, like the video and comment below. On the 30th, we'll be covering the newest chapter of JJK, and then on the 8th of August, the new CSM chapter. So, you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, bye-bye!